Welcome back to the channel. This is SFF Book Introductions. This is Cade, and I'm going to be showing you the 36 books that I read in the second half of this year. It started off with Joe Schreiber's Death Troopers. This is a zombie stormtrooper book, so how could it not be that good? Characters, not very great, but everything else is pretty interesting. So I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Lowest score of the year goes to Red Sister, Mark Lawrence. I don't know what it is about Mark Lawrence's audiobooks, I just can't get into them. So I gave it a 1.5, and I moved on. The next book that I read was Sins of Empire, the first book in the sequel trilogy to Powder Mage trilogy. It's just pulpy fun. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I did quite a bit of Dresden Files. Grave Peril is book 3 in the Dresden Files. This one is completely forgettable, 2.5 out of 5. Next up is Caliban's War, which is the second book in the Expanse series by James S. A. Corey. This book is not as good as the first, but I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. It does its job, does its purpose, continues the series, and expands the Expanse. Next up is The Rule of Two, which is Drew Karpyshyn's second book in his Darth Bane trilogy. This is a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It is pretty perfect to me. It's a Star Wars story that I can't get enough of. I did quite a bit of Michael J. Sullivan this year, and so I did Age of Swords, which is the book 2 of the Legends of the First Empire series. This book I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Most of the characters are forgettable, but the plot is pretty good. The next book that I read was The Black Prism. It is actually a reread. I've read this book before, and it's interesting because it has a good magic system. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I don't know why I reread it, but it was in my audiobook library, so it just went through. I know a lot of people are probably gonna have a problem with this, but I gave it the 3-body problem 2.5 out of 5 stars. I didn't fully get it. I didn't think that it was like mind-blowing or anything. I think the translation probably took away from that. The characters aren't good. I think everybody says that about this series. It just didn't click with me. I probably will reread this before I get to The Dark Forest, The Once and Future King by T.H. White. Now this is a Arthurian tale, kind of like earlier in the year that I read The Warlord Chronicles by Bernard Cornwell. This is a pretty poetic classic idea of Arthur and his upbringing. However, it's very philosophical with the nature of power, and I actually really enjoyed the philosophical talk that it had. 4.5 out of 5. Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne is another author that I just can't really get into his audiobooks, so I gave it a 2 out of 5. The next book up was A Little Hatred by Joe Abercrombie. This is the first book in the second series in the First Law. This I gave a 5 out of 5. It was pretty great. It talks about the Industrial Revolution happening basically in the First Law world, and that premise is just very interesting. I loved it. I gave Dark Age a 3.5 out of 5. I would probably lower it down to a 3 out of 5 because I've read it like twice and I don't remember what happens. The melodramatics of every character takes me out of it. They all act like Darrow, and I don't like Darrow. Kushiel's Dart is a 5 out of 5 story. It is a 4.5 out of 5. I gave it because the politics slow it down quite a bit in the middle, but I really highly recommend Kushiel's Dart to anybody. After the greatness that is Kushiel's Dart, I read The Road by Cormac McCarthy. This is a pretty simple story about a boy and a man traveling in the post-apocalypse United States. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. It didn't capture me near as much as I've heard other people capture. Another Brian McClellan this year is Wrath of Empire, which is the second in the Gods of Blood and Powder series. This one just continues on what I enjoy about the entire series. It's pulpy fun, 4 out of 5. I don't think I've given any of these books for Brian McClellan less than a 4 out of 5. I really recommend them. Speaker for the Dead by Orson Scott Card is a 4.5 to 5 out of 5. I really enjoyed the philosophical talk about this book with what it means to be human and what it means to be intelligent. To 5 out of 5. I loved it. We continue the trend of the Dresden Files with Summer Night, which is the 4th book in the series. This one is probably the first memorable one. It still only gets a 3.5 out of 5, but that's, a pretty good score in my book. This was a family pick, Tender as the Flesh. It is dystopian about when animals get diseases and humans can only resort to cannibalism to get their meat intake. I think they probably forget about bugs, but the story is pretty good. It's pretty dark. There's quite a bit of bad things. There's a puppy scene, quite a bit of trigger warnings if you have problems with cannibalism, obviously, a whole crop of other things. 3 out of 5 because it was very interesting, at least. I continued my foray into A Song of Ice and Fire with The Clash of Kings. This is the second book in the Song of Ice and Fire series. It is peak George R. R. Martin. The man is untouchable in this series. You cannot beat it, I don't think. It's probably top 3, top 2, top 1, I don't know. It's in there. Next up, I read Shogun by James Clavell. This is a historical epic about a man, James Blackwell, Black Dragon, Blackthorn, something like that. He travels to Japan and basically becomes a samurai in their society, and it's pretty funny at times. It can get boring at times, but I give it a 4 out of 5 just because the journey honestly is worth it. The next book I read was The Gray Shear by Kim Liggett. It is a dystopian YA novel with girls basically coming into their womanhood, and I gave it a 3 out of 5. I didn't love it. I read another Expanse book. This is the third book in the Expanse series, Abaddon's Gate by James S.A. Corey. This one is a little bit more memorable than the second book. However, the series doesn't really continue to get any better or any worse. I give it a 3.5 out of 5. Here we have another 5 out of 5 book. This is The Dynasty of Evil by Drew Karpyshyn. It is the penultimate book in the Darth Bane series. It is amazing. You learn how they end up passing on the rule of two, one of the biggest stories and parts of Star Wars and what makes the Sith the Sith. I read The Shadow of What Was Lost to try and fill up that Wheel of Time kind of feel. I gave it a 4 out of 5 at the time. Probably would lower it down to 3.5 because I don't remember any of the characters, which is probably not a good sign. It's very classic epic fantasy with good vibes and good world building, but the characters just aren't there. We can kind of tell that I like Star Wars books, but I'm giving R.A. Salvatore's Attack of the Clones rendition a 5 out of 5. I would probably give it a lower score, but honestly, he adds quite a bit of material to it, primarily being Shmi and the Larson family. If you know anything about that, what happens in the second movie, it's pretty brutal. Honestly, the fact that we get an inside view into it was pretty interesting. However, I followed that up with Demon in White. Demon in White, it continues to be the space epic that I kind of want it to be, but it borrows a little too much from Star Wars. It borrows a little bit from here, from there, and I don't think that it's not being its own thing, but the thing that it's being is not my favorite. I don't like the character of Hadrian Marlowe quite at all. He grows a little bit in this book because he is actually kind of a good person in this one. I can't really get behind his feelings ever. 3.5 out of 5. A Trouble with Peace is Joe Abercrombie's second book in the Age of Madness trilogy. He kind of can't go wrong with First Law. It's a fantastic sequel. I know a lot of people say it's the best sequel of all time. I would say Clash of Kings is better, but this is up. Next up, I read Brothers of the Wind by Tad Williams.
Still Tad. I'm always Tad.
Williams. This is my favorite author. This is a prequel story to the Last King of Ostenard series. This one was pretty poetic and amazing. Instead of with humans, we're with the Hezekiah and the Zediah. But I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. We're continuing with books that I like. Xenocide by Orson Scott Card is pretty good. It really just continues what happens in Speakers for the Dead, but a third added race. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Next, I moved into Dragonflight by Anne McCaffrey. This is the first book in the Dragon Riders of Pern series. This is a big series, an old series, and I give this a 4 out of 5. Lessa is a badass heroine. She's probably one of my favorite characters that I read all year. She's badass in every single way, but the way that Anne McCaffrey writes characters isn't just to make you love them. They feel like real characters, and that's why I really like this series so far. Focus. Focus. Holy shit, will you fucking focus? I'm so close to being done. I read the third book in the Song of Ice and Fire, Storm of Swords by George R. R. Martin. This is a quick 5 out of 5. I can't say anything. Best series ever. Best book in the series, probably. I don't know, I like Feast of Crows, but this one's really good. A Fourth Wing is a 3.5 out of 5. I actually didn't hate it. It was a little bit of fun, a lot of cringe. The Enemies to Lovers was awful, but everything else was pretty much Divergent. Divergent's not a bad story. I did the other prequel to The Last King of Ostenard, which is The Heart of What Was Lost. This is a 3.5 out of 5. It's nearly as poetic as The Brothers of the Wind, but it's more grounded in reality. The Crown Tower is another Michael J. Sullivan that I read this year. This one I gave a 4 or a 3.5. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was pretty interesting to see the introduction of Royce and Hadrian, but unfortunately it wasn't executed near as much as I'd like it to be. The last book that I've read this year is Death Masks. The last book that I completed this year was Death Masks by Jim Butcher. This is the 5th book in the Dresden Files. This one is actually one of the first good Dresden Files. 4 out of 5 stars, and I actually start to like Harry Dresden.